being, the guy who's telling other people what to do, and getting a lot of money for that. That was my job, and it was funny in the beginning, it wasn't funny in the end. And eventually I wanted to do something for myself, and not giving other people advice, but doing it for myself. And it's a huge difference if you number crunch for other people's business or if you do it for yourself. It makes a huge difference. Yeah. Okay, so basically I'd like to talk to you about how to start a business. And for me, it really doesn't matter if you sell cars or anything. It's a product at the end of the day. It's a technical product, or it's an artwork, or you have to do your research, you have to analyze, and you have to make decisions, and then you have to stick to your plan in a way and say, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is how I do it, and you have to fine-tune and adjust. But I like to emphasize in the beginning, where to look at and what to do. So I came to this country, just to put it into perspective, and I had no idea about the art market. I had no idea about what it means to sell artworks. I had no network. I had no artistic background, nothing. So you can imagine it's a bit of a step forward to do something like that. And I think what's important is to do it methodologically. You have to see all the different aspects of a future business, which is socio-demographic framework. I mean, where are we standing in Australia right now? What's the population? What's it going to be in a couple of years, in 10 years' time? Regulatory framework, which is, we think, not that important for the arts business, but it is in fact, because there are things like resale royalties, third market things. I don't want to emphasize here, but it's important as well. The overall economic framework, how's the business developing, how's the economy developing, what are the political developments, and of course technology as well. And you might think it's not important for the art industry, but it is. In fact, especially if you think about selling artworks, it completely changed over the last, I would say, 5 years, from a very static brick and mortar gallery system where people come and watch videos and see artworks, to a more online driven, I say pre-sale sort of engagement with the client, where they have to, and they can look up all sorts of information before they actually come to the gallery to see the artworks. So these sort of things define the overall market situation. And from there on, I started looking at these different questions here, from technology, situation as is, and then ranked from low, medium to high. And this is back in the days, ticket. Who is it? No.
It never ever rings, does it?
It's me.
Might be Ben Shelley. Might be Ben.
It probably is.
So, I mean, basically this chart shows where we are standing right now, and it's ranked in terms of importance, and where we're going to be in the future, and what are the success factors. So from back then, technology was meant nothing, was really not important. It became medium important, and you have to, I call it radar screen, you have to have it on your radar screen to see what's going to happen. Social demographics, I think that's a really important thing, because especially in Australia, things are shifting. New people coming in, and you have to really anticipate what's going to happen, and also where it's going to happen, in which locations. Alex mentioned I'm moving to the eastern suburbs, and that's where my clientele is predominantly. But that might change over the next 5 or 10 years as well. So overall economy, of course, that's important. That will be important in the future. New markets, meaning Australia is a small market. It's a very small market for collectors. what do you think, how many people are collecting art in Australia? In a serious manner. We've got 22 million people.
I'd be saying less than 100.
100?
Less than 100, yeah.
Well, that's a bit pessimistic, but but you're right. I mean, it's in Sydney, I would say serious collectors who I define buying stuff on a regular basis, say $10,000 per piece and more, 200 to 300. So that's very small. And if you serve that niche, it's not enough, right? Because you constantly have to turn over artworks. So you have to think about finding new markets either in different cities in Australia or then overseas. And that might be Asia, or with my background that might be Europe. So regulatory, as I said before, it's not that important, but you have to check the rules and regulations. With suppliers, that's a really interesting perspective, because in the old days when I was a management consultant, what you did with the suppliers is you push them and you press them and you try to get it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And you can do that. You can do it once, right? And it's okay if you're a consultant because you're in and out. If you have to deal with these guys on a regular basis, say from simple things like a company who's making crates, you can push them and you can get it $100 cheaper. But the next time they just say, no, find someone else. So it's a very tricky thing, and it becomes more and more important. Competitors, it's a bitchy business. I've seen lots of different industries, but I've never seen a fragmented industry like the art business, because they're all small entities, and there's no unity behind it, and everybody's against everybody. So, and everybody's jealous, and especially if you're successful, they're especially jealous. I mean, it's unbelievable. And as Alex said, you start as a foreigner, you come into the country, you double your size and revenues and everything every 2 years. People don't like you. So I try to be as nice as possible, but also as discreet as possible. New entries, substitutes, you just have to see what's going to happen. What I do, for example, I'm talking way too much and way too slow, right? I'm so sorry. But what I do, for example, I work with the 3 art universities in Sydney, and I go to every single of their degrees and postgraduate shows, and I pick and choose people who could be interesting. And sometimes I show them, sometimes I don't show them, but you have to watch it. And clients, last but not least, it's a trust business. And the gallery, the first 1.5 years was called 37 degrees, close to the temperature of the body. It's warm, it's rather. I had to change it into my own name because people want to trust you. If they buy an artwork, which is really expensive, they need to know I'm going to be there in 5 years' time, and they can talk to Dominik, blah, 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 blah. So that's why I had to change it into Dominik Mersch Gallery. And I totally underestimated that in the beginning. It's a really important thing. People come back to you, and they trust you. You say, this is a new artist, he's great. I mean, for example, the show which opened last night, it's a Chinese artist. He's quite young, but he's on the brink of becoming famous. So he just got a new gallery in New York, one in Berlin and one in Beijing, and now in Sydney here. And you bring him into Sydney, and you say, okay, this artwork costs 12,000 euros. Dear client, trust me that it's worth it. Okay, you have to like it, but more than that, you have to trust me that in 5 years' time, this guy is going to be on the roof. So that's a pretty big thing. And I totally underestimated that in the beginning. I thought there's a product, people come, they buy, and that's good. No. Okay. So just to give you an example how deep the analysis went, and these are old figures, but you have to look, and that's what I did before I started the business, where we, in comparison to other countries, and Australia, GDP growth in percentage was pretty good back then. In comparison to China, nothing, but by sector, that says a lot. It's a service-driven economy. GDP per capita, Australia is pretty good, better than Germany. I don't know about Austria, but so I just want to give you the indication. It's not that you just open the door and wait for people to come in. Before I chose to come to Australia, I had a close look at the overall market. Now, it's funny because when you talk to people and they ask you, what are you doing? I say, oh, yeah, I'm running a gallery. I say, well, what does it mean? Are you sitting there the entire day and waiting and just, playing solitaire? And it's really hard to explain. So before I started, and I had no knowledge about that at all, with my background as a consultant, I tried to understand for myself what it means. And I quite like this chart because it's pretty simple, but it's good. So, and it doesn't matter if it's a car or a laser or whatever you produce. You produce something, and we have the production side, and the artist is doing something. He's creating a video or a painting or a photograph, and that's the product. And the complex thing about that is, say, if you're in the car business, you know what product you're going to get in 5 years' time, more or less. If you're in the laser business, you know there are innovations, but you still get a sort of similar product to 5 years ago or 3 years ago. With these guys, you have no idea. You open the box, and there's something inside, you have no idea. And you don't know if you like it, you don't know if your clients like it. It is totally unpredictable. And that leads to many problems, and one of them is definitely if you do your business plan, you have to understand if you're going to sell these works. And you can if you know that the new BMW with these series looks similar to the old one, and therefore you can sell these amount of units. With artists, there's no way. And that's a good thing as well, because you have to be curious, right? You have to like the uncertainty in a way. Okay, then we've got the production side, we've got the marketing side, and we've got, I call it the finishing side. So the gallery, as I said before, has to find new stuff, new artists, have to build the artist reputation, have to coach the artist, and you have no idea what that means. And Alex knows it because we go climbing sometimes, and sometimes Sunday morning we're in the car at 7 o'clock in the morning. I get a text message from an artist of mine saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, what should I do?" This is you become a personal coach. It's like a family. It's these guys are really close to you. You have to network. Network is a big thing. I'm probably out 3 times a week to different art events, to museums, to private collectors. And it's funny in the beginning, it's pretty exhausting in the long run, but that's just the thing you have to do. And then you exhibit, and this is where you sit in the gallery, right, and play solitaire. And then you have to market, meaning you have to go out with curators, you have to do press releases, you have to try to get pieces in newspapers and so forth and so forth. Selling, and I'm not good at selling. It's not my I can't talk you into buying an artwork. I think that has to come automatically. And I think if you're passionate about it, people feel it, and I think that's way more important. And again, it's a trust thing. If I talk you into an artwork and you don't like it, it's sitting on your desk or hanging on your wall, and every time you see him, Dominik, I didn't like him. Dominik, well, that's all. Anyway, the finishing part is you have to coordinate with curators. Curators are, do you have any idea who curators are? These guys in the museums who decide which artworks they hang on the walls. And you have to be friends with them, because if you're not, they don't use your artists. So, and if your artists are not in the museum, they are worthless. So it's really important to understand this mechanism of getting a higher value through an institution. Media, important, and this is the thing in Australia, there are art consultants, and they are a pain in the neck, because they block everything to the end consumer. Again, this is a sales channel chart, which shows you how sales work. You've got an artist, you've got the gallery, you've got different things like the internet, like art fairs, like consultants, and like auctions. And you've got clients, and the clients are divided in 3 areas: institutions, museums, corporations. Corporations, by the way, the market is dead. It's not existing anymore. Corporations don't buy anything at all. It's been dead for 3 or 4 years. And that's really a shame, because these guys had a big budget for art. It's completely gone.
Why is that?
Well, there's a bank which is has a similar name to your university, for example, and they sacked 1,500 people. They had a fantastic art collection, and they were buying a lot of stuff for their offices all around the world. If you sack people, you can't justify at the same time to buy art, right?
University does.
You've got a really good buying art or sacking people?
Well, keeping the art and taking the people.
Yeah, but keeping the art is a different thing to buying new art, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, and this is really interesting, because there are artists who sell directly without any gallery to the end customers. Most of them sell they consign their works to the gallery, and the gallery then sells to clients. And there's a secondary market, which you probably heard about, Sotheby's and Christie's. These guys take works from the primary market, and they sell it to people after they have bought it from galleries. Okay, that's a really important thing. When I started the business 6.5 years ago, where do you go? I mean, to start with, I had no idea about Sydney at all. So I looked at lots of different locations, and I ended up in Waterloo, because back then it was really cool, and it was hip, and it was something which suited my idea of a gallery, which is cutting edge, which is showing different perspective on art, a European perspective on art. It's even a bit scary, or back then it was scary. Have you ever been to Waterloo? There. So you say?
I live near Dame Street, where they have these art galleries, let's say, so they seem like recycle, old recycled buildings.
Yeah, that's
pretty nice. That's
where I'm on Dame Street.
Oh.
Potential client. But back in the days, I mean, when they started this gallery hub there was nothing. And in fact, there was this one person who came to the gallery a couple of years ago, and he was not looking at the art, but at the building. It's an old warehouse. And I said, "Sorry, can I help you, sir?" And he said, "Yeah, I have no idea about art, but I used to be the general manager for Kodak. And Kodak was the company who was using these warehouses for their production. And I said, okay, so tell me, how was it back then in the days? I said, you have no ideas. You wouldn't park your car outside, you know, because there's housing projects around the corner, and it was really scary. So convincing the rich people from the eastern suburbs to go to Waterloo was a big thing. And then Fratelli Fresh came, you know, this deli and things like that, and yeah. And now it's the cycle is, it became really hip, and now it's declining again. And I shouldn't say that because it's on record, right? But that's why I'm moving. That's partly because I'm moving back to the eastern suburbs, because that's where you know there are new cool places and there are underdeveloped areas, and I think that's what, you know, people want to see, something cool and hip. And so I go into this location, which was an old workshop for a sail making company, huge, really cool, and yeah, it's something where people want to discover things. And I think you have to. It's like in New York, and I call it Chalcification. People, firstly, the artists come in really underdeveloped areas, then the galleries come, then the young professionals come, and then the rich people come, and then the artists go, and then the galleries go, and it's a cycle. So do you know that street? That's the gallery. Yeah. To whom do you sell? And it's, again, this is all about trying to make you understand that, you know, I haven't opened the door 7 years ago and just waiting for people. I did half-year research. I looked at every single gallery in Sydney and tried to understand the market and all of that. And we've been talking about clients before, and you said probably 100 people are these serious collectors. And they are really important because they are spreading the word. They are talking to other people. They are introducing new clients to the gallery. And they trust you, and they, you know, you build a brand, and they follow you in a way. And when I did my research, there were these people, they called walk buyers. They were Saturday morning impulsive purchase people, probably most of the time couples, having a you know, a nice night, having a great breakfast, seeing something and buying something. These people are completely gone. This market segment doesn't exist anymore at all. It's the same like corporations. People don't spend $5,000 on a Saturday morning on a nice painting. Absolutely not. Everybody's doing a lot of research, and there's no such thing like impulsive purchase. And that's because GFC1, GFC2, psychological questions, what's going to happen with our economy, da 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 da. And that's a shame in a way, because, you know, this is nice, nice easy money, but you just have to work harder. Corporations, we talked about that, and institutions. I find that really frustrating, to sell a work to an institution, to find money. I mean, they don't have any money at all. If you want to sell an artwork to a museum, the way it goes is you have to find a private collector who buys the work from you and donates the work to the museum. And the more horrible thing is, it's called Cultural Development Program, where basically the museums asks artists to donate works. And artists normally do that. They give their works away for free so that they are in the museum collection. They will be never shown, but at least for their CV, it's in there. And that totally undermines the authority of a gallery to sell an artwork, right? Because why would you buy something if you get it for free? So, and the other thing is, and I start to understand it, it's a trust thing as well. They have the unwritten rule that museums only buy artworks after 5 years from a gallery who's older than 5 years, because they want to know that you are a serious guy, that they can trust you, you know. Which is really frustrating, because if you have artists who are super well known worldwide, and they just sit there and wait and do nothing, and you think, oh, that would be a perfect piece for your collection, but they just don't buy anything. But I think that's just something you have to understand, you have to work for, and
how many galleries closed down within 5 years?
Say again?
Do you know how many galleries closed down within the first 5 years roughly? It's substantial.
70%. Yeah.
So there's a reason to say.
Yeah.
Wait.
I mean, it's a, you know, when I come to, if I come to the last chart, which is lessons learned, it says, first thing, be humble. But I'm standing here today and I'm very proud to say I survived the first 5 years. 70% of galleries don't do it. And it's pretty cool. It's a good thing. And then you have this target group, developers. So again, institutions, they are gatekeepers. If they don't support your artist, they never take off. If you are with your artists in exhibitions, people come to your gallery afterwards and said, oh wow, I saw Tim Johnson at the MCA and it was great, and to have works of him, blah, 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 blah. And catalogs and books are important as well, because that's a written proof that this artist has made it. So you try to support these sort of things. You give donations, you give money to support these exhibitions. Media. You always try to get your artists into the papers. At the end of the day, there are only 2 Saturday morning papers where they write about art. Everything else is shut down. And then there's this nice thing called the Chinese wall between advertising and editorial. Have you heard about that? It's you talk to the editor of the magazine and you say, look here, this is a really interesting new artist. Do you want to run a story? And they say, yeah, it's really interesting. Blah, blah, blah. And then 5 minutes later, the advertising guy is giving you a call and says, hey, Dominik, do you want to advertise with us? I said, no. Yeah, but you want to run a story, right? On this artist. Wouldn't it be great if you have, a complimentary ad in there for $5,000? No. Then you don't get the story. So this is bullshit. This is, the Chinese wall between these two. I mean, of course, it's always, you get an article if you pay the advertising for it. And that's really expensive. So you have to be careful if you want to support that or not. The next gatekeeper are architects. Lots of public projects in Sydney where they put artworks in or outside the building. You have to talk to the architect. And when I say talk to the architect, you have to talk to them really early, from really early onwards. Otherwise, you have no chance to place an artwork in there, or 2 or 3 or whatever. And then there's always this tension between architects and artists. When they start talking to each other, you say, are there any architects in here? Architects perceive themselves as artists as well. And I guess in a way they are. So there's always this really unpleasant situation where the architect says, no, we can't do that. And the artist said, you know what, this is my artwork, you can't tell me what to do. And then you're in deep trouble because you try to balance things out, and it's a tricky thing. Auction houses, that's interesting as well, because you have the secondary market. So say you buy an artwork from me, and then after 5 years you say, I don't like it anymore, or I want to buy a new artwork and I need money. I go to the auction house, and the auction house then sells on your behalf. And this is a good thing for the entire arts industry, because they put a price tag. That's the only sort of market you have with an artwork. Because if I find a new artist, he and I sits together and we say, okay, this painting, let's make it $3,000. It could be 30,000, it could be 300,000, it could be 300. So you've got a certain measure, but within that you can dictate the price. And the only way to justify the price is with an auction house. And it's been used in the past by the big galleries where they place works in auctions and they bid for their own artists and they increase the prices. And then you've got an external justification to rise the prices, which is pretty horrible actually. And you can write this, way for reputation. Yes, the artist achieved $500,000 in this exhibition, and it's a great artist. But it's a very dangerous game to play. This is a bit of eye candy, just to give you an indication what I did with my Germanic, how do you call it, precision or anal, I don't know. So I tried to visit all the galleries available in Sydney, and I had this spreadsheet, opening hours, how many exhibitions per year, how big is the space, are they members of any associations, what's their profile, what's their price range, blah, 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 blah. And so I made up my picture of Sydney from a bird's eye view into a very precise and detailed situation analysis. And I think that's really important. I think one of the reasons why I was successful is because I did that. And I gave myself half year time to look into the details and to understand the local market as well. Okay, now we have to. So the thing is, now you've got all the data, and now you have to do the right thing. You have to step one step forward, and you have to create your plan, your business plan. And for me, that derives from the mission statement, what you really want to do, breaking it down to a strategy, and then to your actual business. What processes do you have? How do you organize your business? And which systems, IT, HR, and so on, is supported by? And yeah, what I do is increase the reputation of international contemporary art in Australia, meaning bringing new interesting artists into Australia, and to promote Australian artists all over the world. So inbound and outbound. And back then, from my point of view, nobody else did it. There were a few galleries who were bringing in international art, but not a lot. But most of them were supporting Australian artists, but only in Australia. So that was it's a small niche, but it was a good story. And I think I was able to promote this story in a good way. And then you break it down to action points. You need an interesting space, a strong network with museums and collectors, a cooperation with partner galleries. So what I did as well is I started cooperations with galleries in Germany, in the US, to exchange artists and ideas and marketing and books and all of that. Marketing expertise, I think that's really important to send the message out there to other people. And artist support, from money to text messages. Being there for these guys and helping them and further develop their ideas and also to have them as friends really. And also the second thing is finding young Australian contemporary artists and also established contemporary artists, and again bring them back into Europe. Process model. That's basically how a gallery runs, I think. And again, if someone ever is going to tell me you're going to sit there and wait for people to come in, I'll just show you this chart here. So basically what a gallery does is you look after the artist, you do marketing, you do sales, you have an operations process, and you have admin supportive processes. And this process model derives from the strategy, and it has to support the strategy. So artists care very quickly, select who you want to have, you develop, you present them, and you look after them. It's a constant thing. Marketing, maybe I just leave it like that, and I give you an example of what it means. For example, select media mix. You have many options to present your message. What do? You can print catalogs. You have a web page, of course. Did you try to penetrate in-depth information? You have previews. You have artist dinners where you invite certain elected people. You have studio visits. You have bulk emails. You have magazine advertising. So finding the right mix, that's the tricky thing. And from my point of view, it's always a question of communication, and communication is penetration. So you constantly have to inform people with all sorts of things, but they have to be very consistent and very similar. So you always have, for example, these are just invitation cards for exhibitions we had in the past. And they always have the same outfit, so that people can recognize it. Yeah, and that goes through all different channels, from the web page to drill down to certain artists, and to artist selection, and then to one artist. And the artist here is shown with different works. So, and from so we have a mission statement, we have our strategy, we have our processes, and now the question is, how do you plan your business in terms of money? Because you have costs, they are pretty predictable, but the income, that's a big question. So you try to do the planning over the year per event or per artist, and you try to do that with previous figures. So say with this guy in the past, I did 50,000, and I think I can do that again. You think, but you don't know, because you don't know what the product is. If you would sell the same artwork again, it would be easy, but it's not. So you have to put a lot of trust in it, and this is still after 7 years.
Maybe space. You keep talking and I fix it.
This is still the hardest part to predict the revenue. Yeah, and that's okay. Let's go to the costs. On the other hand, the costs are pretty. I always subdivide them in fixed costs and in variable costs. And what you try to do is to reduce the fixed cost as much as possible and to adapt it in terms of variations. So the rent, of course, is fixed, right? As infrastructure, consumables, communication is fixed and is variable as well. Labor, of course, you have to have people who are there full time, but then you fill the gaps with interns and people who are coming in and out and are paid by the hour. So basically, keep your costs as flexible as possible, because you never know what the revenue side brings. Yeah, I think we're gonna, because you have to.
Don't worry too much.
If I can give you advice, you know, if you want to start a business, I'd really like to emphasize, look into your research a lot, and take your time and try to understand the environment, the business, the processes, and everything before you make a decision if you want to go ahead or not. If you have a technical product, think about where the markets would be. Talk to potential clients, talk to competitors if possible, and try to gather as many as possible information. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. And then eventually you have all this stuff on the table and you have to put things together. And from my point of view, if you've done that and when you started your business, then you have to do this. From my point of view, you have to be persistent. Never give up. I mean, honestly, you just go for it. Running a business is nobody ever says anything good about it. You have to be intrinsically motivated. You have to accept for yourself there are going to be lots of problems and situations where you think, I'm not really doing this right thing. But you have to be persistent. At the same time, you have to be humble. People don't like, people do like successful people, but people don't like to have people who, wear it on their sleeve. So be humble. Be nice to clients and suppliers. We talked about that. Importantly as well, and this is a bit arbitrary, but stick to your plan. So make a plan and try to really go for it. Do measures. And I have a to-do list, and I constantly, try to remind myself to do this and that and the other. But if you see along the way, times are changing, certain markets are changing. For example, I tried to go to Singapore to an art fair. It cost me a lot of money, and it was not successful at all. And so you have to readjust and adjust your plan and say, okay, I'm not going to do it again next year. It's been bad, but don't throw more money after bad money. Market your niche and brand your business. I think it talks for itself. Make the same mistake once, but only once. I think that's really important. It's okay to make mistakes, and you will make, if you go in your own business, you will make a lot of mistakes. And it's painful, and it's especially painful if it's your own money. But it's okay, it's really okay, but you have to learn. You just have to say, okay, that was wrong. In the future, I'm not going to do that the same way again. And this one as well, I think curiosity is one of the most important things. You always have to look left and right. You're on the way to giving a talk, you listen to the radio and you think, I could do that way. You talk to people and you see, okay, they're going to do it this way. And there's so many opportunities out there. You just have to grab them, you have to see them, you have to be open for it. And at the same time, be an accountant. Nitty-gritty control, payments, money, quality. You have to go down to the last thing because you are the person, it's your business, and if you don't say, this publication is not good, if you don't say, nobody says it. And play to win. If you decide to do a business, to make a business, to go into a business, you have to do it 100%. It's not a game. If you really want to do it, you have to win. You have to want to win. And if you don't have that drive to do, don't do it. And last but not least, enjoy what you do. And I can say, I do. So thank you very much.
Questions?
What made you pick art as your next career move? Did you have a personal interest or?
Yeah, good question. First of all, I was a collector myself before I started for 25 years. And when I was a management consultant, three things happened. I which made me change. I turned 40. That was a long time ago. My father died and I was seriously sick. So I was lying in this hospital bed and I thought, I mean, life can be over tomorrow, right? Do I really want to do what I do? Do I really want to earn a lot of money solving other people's problems? I said, no, I don't want to do it anymore. And then I decided I'm going to do something different. And in my Germanic way, I started a spreadsheet with all with all options, you know, from going back to university, starting my own consultancy business, going to a big corporation, la 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 la, and then doing on the other side, having lots of parameters where I judge myself. Can I do this? Can I do this? Da 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 da. And then a friend of ours, and we were living in London back then, came to me and she said, "You have to put gallery in there." And I thought, what a crazy idea! I hate running a gallery, no way. So I said, okay, so I'll do it. And then I judged everything, and it's a huge spreadsheet. And you press this button, and it does all the calculations. And the gallery thing is ranked number 1 by far. and you know, me being German, I said, okay, if that's the case, I have to do it.
So being a collector had given you a perspective on the industry, so you weren't coming in completely cold, right? Okay.
Look, and I mean, honestly, it's not rocket science. It's, you know, there are many soft factors, but to understand the industry is quite easy. And I've been collecting for a long time. I knew some artists. I went to art fairs. I had connections to museums and stuff like that. So I wasn't a total meatball.
I'm wondering, who do you represent? Do you represent the artists or do you represent the buyers? Or do you do both?
Artists, just artists.
So you are effectively an agent for the artists.
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
And so therefore, does that make this a zero-sum game? That if your gallery wins them, some other gallery doesn't?
Yeah.
That's why it's a pitchy industry.
Yeah. I mean, you have to understand that, for example, people building a new house, they've got new walls. I always like that. I hate if people have glass walls. That's horrible. So they've got new walls, and they have to buy some artworks, and they go shopping. They go shopping on the internet, and then they have a look at different galleries and decide which works. And that's where you are in direct competition. Although you don't have the same product, it's the same thing. And if they don't buy it with them, but with you, that's great.
You mentioned a couple times the trust issue in selling art.
Mm-hmm.
And you also mentioned that it's becoming kind of going towards internet buying and whatnot. How does that they seem kind of opposites, right? Trust and internet buying?
Yeah.
How is that actually developing? Like,
Well,
do you get a lot of international sales through internet, or?
No, I don't. And I absolutely do not believe in the pure sales channel of the internet. I think it's important for pre-sales. I think it's important for people to make up their mind, to get different information. But when it comes to finally seeing the work, touching the work, smelling the work, you have to be in the gallery, and that's my opinion. And so far, I only sold 2 works for people who actually worked in the gallery, and they were people who knew the artist and who've seen similar works before. And trust, if you buy an art